Now, in this week's Let's Talk Some Star Wars, I'm going to discuss the results and your comments from the last two polls that asked the questions, what was the best lightsaber battle in the Clone Wars animated series, and then what was the best from Rebels? And yes, I know there were many of you who asked about the two Clone Wars micro series, and perhaps I will do a separate video on those in the near future, but for now, it's just the official sources of canon. And since we have two polls to cover, let's waste no more time and take a look at the results of the first one, which was for the Clone Wars. And just like the battle that actually won, this was no contest, as Maul and Savage vs. Sidious got roughly 2/3 or 65% of the vote, with another Maul and Savage fight, this time against Obi-Wan and Ventress, taking second place and getting 18%, and the other three getting anywhere from 5 to 7% of the vote. Which leads us right away to our top-rated comment, which came to us from Norton Togg, who said, "There can only be two, and you are no longer my apprentice. Nuff said." And that's one of the things I love about this duel. This was Sidious himself just going to Mandalore to take care of some Sith business. He doesn't send Dooku or anyone else, or even take anyone else with him. He doesn't sneak in or try and lure Maul and Savage into some sort of trap. He literally walks through the front door of their palace on Mandalore and says, "You have become a rival, and I'm not having that," and then proceeds to gleefully take care of business, which is what AK Channel TV touches on in their comment here. If you saw this duel, you know why I picked it. It finally demonstrates Sidious's skill when dueling. I mean, dueling with two blades is hard enough, but when you make it seem like a game against a great duo and finish them effortlessly, you know you are truly the Senate, and the most powerful Sith Lord in several generations that should be feared yet respected. Then there's this comment from Grand Admiral Thrawn, who says, "Sidious fight because we see Sidious just toy with Maul and that other fool, and someone gets killed, and it's just fun to see these people we know are strong get ripped apart. And best of all, Sidious is just having the time of his life. It's pure greatness." And that's yet another thing I love, because you know it must be difficult for Darth Sidious to wear the mask of Palpatine, if you will, because much like Anakin became Darth Vader and banished his former self, Palpatine long ago became Sidious, and ceased being who and what he once was, yet must still pretend to be that former self. And that's why I believe we see him cackling with joy anytime he can just embrace the dark side and go wild, if you will. It's very much a release for him, and as great as Maul and Savage were, it was awesome to see Sidious treat them as little more than a way to blow off some steam. And speaking of Maul, let's get to a comment from Tyrannosaur Friday, who said, "Brother, I'm an unworthy apprentice. I'm not like you, and never was." So yeah, Savage and Maul vs. Sidious because of Maul, with all the personal stuff that happens to him. His master betrays him, but then again, Maul did do it first because he said that him and Savage were the true Sith Lords. His master kills his brother, says to his face that he's been replaced, and then beats him in a lightsaber duel which humiliates him and then begins to torture him. And this comment really begins to touch on one of the greatest things about the Clone Wars, the character development. Not only did it take already well-known characters, like Anakin and Obi-Wan for example, and flesh them and their friendship out further, thus strengthening the story of Revenge of the Sith, but it took brand new characters like Ahsoka and Rex, or those first introduced in the Clone Wars micro-series like Ventress, and turned them into some of the best, most beloved characters in the entire Star Wars franchise. It also took a character like Maul, one who initially had only a couple lines in The Phantom Menace before being cut in half, and let's be honest, probably the most disappointing character we've ever seen in Star Wars, and turned him into arguably one of the best and most developed characters in the whole franchise. And what's even more impressive is that they really sold this rather difficult to swallow idea that he could survive being cut in half and falling down a shaft because of the strength with the dark side his hatred for Kenobi gave him. A hatred he held on to till the bitter end of his life, and what ultimately led to his final demise. Okay then, let's now move on to a comment from Wesley Marsh, which goes along with what I've been saying here. Notice how all the best lightsaber battles in the series involve Maul and or Savage. They did a great job with developing Maul into a constant threat and showing he was just as skilled as ever. I thought Maul vs. Pre Vizsla would get a lot more votes. It was really cool to see a Mandalorian with the Ancient, and even cooler Darksaber, duel a former Sith. And then there's this comment from Nathan Wilson who said, "Maul vs. Pre Vizsla has only 6%, but it has so many different weapons and fighting styles combined to make for a truly cinematic fight." And, you know, honestly, I was surprised this one didn't do a lot better. It actually ended up only getting 5% of the total vote. And as both the previous comments pointed out, this was a unique fight that showed a Mandalorian's ability to tangle with a well-trained Force user. And that's what I personally loved about it. It showcased how and why They were such great adversaries for the Jedi, even though he's of course taking on a Sith or former Sith in this actual encounter. Okay, let's now wrap up this poll with a comment from Obi-Wan Kenobi himself, and unfortunately, since YouTube no longer shows what people voted for, I can only guess what fight he's actually talking about in his comment here, but really, either one would probably apply to it, so here goes. This is an unconventional choice, but I'm going to defend it. So many people underestimated me in this duel, but I think it solidly defined both my power and character, as well as Maul's. It firmly established both my tenacity and my refusal to give up on Maul's obsession with me. It also established our power relative to each other. I was confirmed to be stronger than Maul and Savage combined, with a decisive win while Maul was established as weaker. You can see how Maul always tries to fight me when the odds are stacked in his favor, because he knows he can't beat me one-on-one. The only time he does fight me one-on-one is in Rebels, where I easily kill him. Plus, this duel is full of tension and looks amazing. Great action, great characters, great meaning, and consistent plot progression. What more could you want? And now let's move on to the best lightsaber battle in Rebels, and as you can see, this again wasn't much of a contest, even though, oddly enough, most if not all of the top comments, as we'll get to in a moment, were in favor of Obi-Wan versus Maul, and not the actual winner. Anyway, Ahsoka vs. Vader took roughly 2/3 of the vote, with the aforementioned Obi-Wan vs. Maul getting roughly only a quarter. And the other three, although good duels in their own right, were complete non-factors in the poll. And let's then right away get to the top-rated comment, which came to us from The Stark, who said, Obi-Wan vs. Maul is one of the greatest moments in Star Wars for me. The duel itself is perfect, short, and impactful. This scene is all about Obi-Wan's resolve to protect Luke and Maul's desire for closure. Both those things are fulfilled. This is the perfect end to the greatest rivalry in all of Star Wars. And you know, I could probably go on and on about this duel and what it meant for these two characters for quite some time. In fact, I'd like to do some videos in the near future that really take an in-depth look at some of the characters of Star Wars, and both Maul and Obi-Wan are towards the top of that list. Anyway, as the Stark alludes to in his comment, this duel is the culmination of something that started way back in The Phantom Menace and ended beautifully here in Rebels. And the real crazy thing is, I can remember the first time I saw this duel and my reaction was, really, that's it? But then I stepped back and thought about it and realized that was perfect. That was the absolute best way for their rivalry to come to an end. And I love that Obi-Wan has grown so much as a Jedi over the years, while Maul, in contrast, has only descended further into madness. And whereas Maul is hell-bent on killing him, Kenobi has essentially forgiven Maul for everything he's ever done to him, and even offers him comfort in his final moments by letting him know that there is a chosen one. And when Maul says that he will avenge us, Kenobi says nothing and only offers an ever so slight nod of the head to concur, offering Maul a final moment of peace instead of refuting that it's about vengeance, because that's not what it's about for Obi-Wan, not at all. It's not vengeance he seeks. He's risen above that. He's risen above all that and is ready to join with the Force because he's let go of all his fear and anger at this point. And now, right or wrong, he will let Luke set things right to hopefully undo his failures with Anakin. Then there's this comment, which I'll encourage you to pause and read, from Martin Shanahan, who has a great summary of the final Maul vs. Obi-Wan encounter. Before then moving on to a comment from Casper Nilsson, who had this complaint about the Ahsoka-Vader duel. The only problem with Ahsoka vs. Vader was that, spoilers, Ahsoka didn't die. That would have made the duel even more tragic. A master defeating his former friend and apprentice. That's what the Obi-Wan vs. Maul did right. A final ending to Maul's story. And as much as I love the character of Ahsoka Tano, and as happy as I am that we'll no doubt be seeing more of her at some point in the future, I tend to agree with what Supreme Leader Smeagol said in his comment. It would have been the perfect end for Ahsoka's arc, and it would have been far more impactful had Vader killed her here. And yeah, I know Rebels was a kid's show, and I know some will think I'm sadistic for saying this, but witnessing Vader literally kill Ahsoka by plunging a lightsaber through her chest could have been the most tragic and brutal, yet fitting, moment in all of Star Wars. A moment of terrible and twisted poetry like few others, as the apprentice is killed by what her master had become. It also would have strengthened the significance of Luke somehow bringing him back to the light eventually, after what, for anyone watching this story in order, would have felt like the last nail in the coffin for Anakin Skywalker ever returning to the light. And sure, just because Vader didn't actually kill her doesn't mean this duel didn't work and wasn't chock full of suspense and emotion, because going into it, we didn't know the fate of Ahsoka. As many pointed out in the comment, that's one of the best parts about it. There were also some chilling moments, like the one Bisk Skywalker pointed out in his comment, which is when we heard the voice of Anakin mixed with the voice of Vader. But, and I respect the hell out of Dave Filoni, don't get me wrong, this really seemed like someone unwilling to let go of their favorite character. Though again, I am excited to see what comes next for Ahsoka, especially since we know that she's alive in the time period after the original trilogy, and she will at some point no doubt speak to Luke and learn how Anakin Skywalker came back to the light in the end, which may offer her some comfort and allow her to move on. It will be very interesting to see what she can become when no longer under the shadow of Vader and or Anakin. In closing here, I again want to thank everyone who participates in these polls, either by just voting or by voting and leaving a comment. I really do appreciate it, and I enjoy doing these, and I do hope you enjoy taking part in them and watching the videos that ensue. Anyway, it's now time for the Super Bowl of lightsaber battles. If you're watching this now, it means the poll for best lightsaber battle in all of Star Wars, which is what we've been leading up to these past few weeks, is now up and can be found on the YouTube mobile app. And of course, next weekend, I will be crowning the champion and discussing the results. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about the results of these polls, or about what I or anyone else had to say. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.